Mike Breen, kind enough to call in here on the Rich Eisen Show after last night's Game 6 and in advance of Sunday's Game 7. How are you, Mike?
I'm good, Rich. How are you?
That was an incredible moment after the game with Sager. What was that like working with him last night?
Well, I've had the pleasure of working Olympics with him. We worked 3 Olympics together at NBC, and the fans know him as this a great sideline reporter with the flashy suits and a lovable guy. But he's as good a teammate as you could ever have. The guy's incredible in that he gets so much information, and he doesn't care if he's the one that delivers it or he gives it to a colleague. He just loves being around people. He loves being part of something. And I'm always amazed, and it kind of blows me away how, he's had an incredible career. But for him to take the most difficult time in his life and make it his shining moment is extraordinary. And what he's done to show people who are going through difficult times, who are battling leukemia or cancer, and showing them that you can still, live to your fullest and be positive and do an incredible job. That's a bigger impact, what he's done with that, than anything he could ever do, just in terms of being a sideline reporter. And to be able to take that awful thing that's happened to him and make it in some ways the best thing that's happened to him in terms of showing what kind of man he truly is it's overwhelming, and it's hard to imagine.
Yeah, and you see the reaction from coaches like Popovich, who takes his pocket square out of his jacket and uses it to wipe his face and puts it back in Sager's jacket, or LeBron after a very intense game last night, throwing his arm around him, and Curry earlier in the year when Sager asked Curry about the amount of rest that he and his teammates were getting, and Curry said, well, it's nothing compared to you. Just the reaction from the NBA community has been remarkable to see too, Mike.
Right, and last night, it was obviously an unbelievably special moment for LeBron James in what has been an incredible roller coaster ride for him in these playoffs, and to be so aware or be more aware of what Craig's going through than his moment. Just it gives you a little insight into somebody. And the thing about Craig too is, he didn't want anything special. He just wanted to do his job last night. We had various things that we were going to do. He just wanted to do his job. And he was so worried about stepping on our toes, especially with Doris.
Sure.
And was so concerned with making sure Doris was okay with everything and anything. That it just shows you what kind of man he is and why people love him. It's a pretty horrific way to find out how many people love you, but he's certainly finding that out.
Mike Breen joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So I know, listen, it's first blush. Do we know if Craig's going to be part of Game 7 for you guys?
No, as far as I know, it was for the one game. We had actually hoped to have him earlier in the series, but he has some pretty intense treatments that he had to go through. It was an 8-day stretch thing,
yes,
and it was the only game he could do. And then he has some believe it or not, he's got some like this big golfing outing with a bunch of really close friends of his that he had afterwards. So
sure.
His schedule is pretty packed. We're fortunate the son of a gun was able to squeeze us in.
Yeah. So let's talk about last night, Mike. This one, just from my couch, appeared to be one of the most wild and intense settings I have ever seen anywhere for anything. And I know that sounds exaggerated or hyperbole, but you had the front row seat. Would you? How does this compare with other settings that you've been in for other big games, Mike?
It was certainly one of the best. It's the loudest I've heard that building, and loudest and longest. The intensity to start was incredible. The pregame energy in the building was incredible. Although I will say the pregame energy in the building in Game 5 was the same thing with LeBron James. Every dribble and shot he took on the layup line, they were booing him, and I've never seen that. Usually they wait to the game, but it just continued. And I think what made it so crazed was the start of the game. That's one of the best first quarters I've ever seen a team play, and to do it in that atmosphere or with those stakes, facing elimination, coming off the win, a Golden State team that was angered from what happened with Draymond Green, and now he's back, and then you add in the fact that it was the year to the day that Golden State won on that building and won the championship. It really it was the perfect storm for that. And again, that haymaker that they threw in the first quarter just sent the crowd into a delirious state. And then to have Golden State come back, and you can sense it in Cleveland. And, I've talked to a lot of people who are from there. They're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah. Yes, they are.
Because that's what's happened to them in their sports fans, in their lives as a sports fan. And when it didn't, you went right back up to that sense of just delirious joy that they were going to watch their team win the game. It was very, very cool from both a player's standpoint with the intensity and what it meant to the fans in that building.
Well, the shoe is going to drop on Sunday on somebody. And before we get to that, though, the mouthpiece being thrown by Steph Curry last night, when it was flying, you guys were right on that. I mean, right away. I imagine it's the first time you've ever seen a mouthpiece fly out of the hands of anybody in your professional broadcasting career, Mike.
No, I actually saw Curry do it earlier this season.
No kidding.
Yeah, but what he did, like when he was walking to the bench, he threw it on the floor and it hit the scoreboard. There was nobody around. Mm-hmm. But this was such a spontaneous, emotional outburst, which is unusual for him. The other ones are more of frustration, where he was either upset he missed a shot or something, and he just kind of and just threw it down. But this one last night was different. He had a little rage going there because of the frustration, both with the game and with what was going on with him.
Does the NBA have an officiating problem or a crisis with officiating right now, Mike, with the 2-minute reports and whether they feel the pressure and that they might be cracking under it with some of these calls, including a ticky-tack 6th foul on the back-to-back MVPs of a league in a Game 6 of an NBA Finals, Mike?
It's a great question, Rich, and here's what I think. I do think that the intense scrutiny on every single call has taken away a little bit of their quick decisiveness and their confidence. I think because they know every call is going to be either on one of those reports, or they're going to hear about it when they go back to the locker room after the game, or get an email from one of the superiors. I think it's too much where they might be a little tight because of all that stuff. Now, I'm sure most of them would disagree with that, but that's just my feeling as being around referees. I know they don't like the scrutiny of every single call. The other thing too is, I believe the officiating staff is going through a pretty big rebuilding phase right now. They've had in the last 5 years, and I don't know the exact number, but it's about 10 to 12 of the top officials in the game, crew chiefs, people that have worked all these huge games before, not just as an official, but as a crew chief. And that's a huge, huge hit. There's only 60 total officials, so it's coming up on almost a quarter of the staff. And then when you get to these big games, you get a lot of these officials who are really good, but they haven't been in these heated, intense situations before. And I think, like a player who goes through a 3 for 15 in his first finals, big pressure cooker, an official sometimes can have that as well. And I think there's a lot of good young officials, but you need time, and you need a lot of those big games to build up before you become a LeBron James of the officiating staff.
So last one for you, Mike. What in your mind is the key to Game 7 that you're going to be calling Sunday?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I think with Cleveland, to me, the key for Cleveland has been on the defensive end of the floor. The Game 3 blowout and last night, their first quarter defense was absolutely smothering. We're talking about the team that's the highest scoring team in the NBA in 24 years. And they had 11 points in the first quarter. To me, that's incredible. And if they defend like that with that type of full-time commitment, they're really hard to beat, because right now LeBron James is clearly the best player on the floor, and he is so focused that if the rest of the guys follow suit, and that does not necessarily mean hitting shots, if they play that kind of defense, that's key for them. And I think for Golden State, the key is that first quarter. They've got to come out and establish their main guys, whether it's Green, whether it's Curry, whether it's Thompson. Doesn't have to be all three, but establish that, get the crowd going, and get back that little swagger that has been missing for a good chunk of these finals.
Well, Mike, I know you're traveled out and you've been working nonstop for 2 months. I really appreciate you calling in after such a big game and in the midst of your downtime that you have so rare, and have a great cast on Sunday. What an honor to have a Game 7 on your plate on Father's Day and the whole country watching. Enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it's blessed. And Rich, I love coming on with you, so anytime.
Thanks, Mike.
No need to thank.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Take care.
Okay.
You be well. That's Mike Breen.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.